Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Okay, guys, I thought I'd do a quick video. I know that it's been a stumbling point for most, at least, mashallah, those of us who are simple-minded, mashallah, they do find it a bit of a struggle trying to get their head around how our sun could be cloaked, as it were, or anything else in the sky from our line of view. So, I mean, how are these planetary bodies only appearing and disappearing? Now, we've also mentioned that there's quite a few variables here, one of which is that the solar system, is running in a retrograde orbit, which basically means it's running in the opposite direction. So every time it's going past us, just like another car in the opposite direction of the motorway, it just goes over our atmosphere, maybe for the best part of half an hour to whatever time period, and that's different celestial bodies which whiz past depending on the speed of their rotation. Don't forget, we've got the same with the planetary bodies. Some of us, we rotate the sun in 12 months, others take years and years and years before they finish one cycle. So, I mean, depending on the speed of the planet and its orbit, you'll get to see it for that whatever duration in that particular segment of its passage, right, on its retrograde orbit. And the same applies for the star. As far as we're concerned, the star itself is next to our sun right now, and there seems to be a magnetic tug of war between the two. And when I say tug of war, it's not really, it seems like the proton star. And don't forget, a proton star is much smaller. It's, at least this one is much smaller from the data than our sun, which basically, and yet it's more condensed, more heavier than our sun, and far more powerful in its magnetic and gravitational influence. And right now it seems it's literally drawing the sun's energy, right? Which it would if you had two forces that came together like that, similar forces. Now, we understand this to be a proton star with a dust cloud around it, as well as then other planetary bodies. And this is what the data is very strongly pointing towards, as well as other asteroid debris, and that's tailing this particular star. Now, we're getting to see the planets which are going around their orbit, around their own star, whilst we orbit our sun, mashallah. And that star is positioned right now next to our sun. So you can imagine right now what you've got is two solar systems that have interlocked with one another. The other's entered our solar system on its elliptical orbit, and its celestial bodies are going in a retrograde orbit to us. So you've literally got two systems that are basically interlinked with one another, and their planetary bodies are basically orbiting around their star, which is next to our sun, and we are orbiting our sun at the same time, but in the opposite direction. We go anti-clockwise, whereas these planets are going clockwise. Now, the cloaking technology that we need to discuss over here. Now, another thing that I want, obviously, to put out there, and this is just from I'm postulating again, is that once this star has totally drained our sun of its energy, this is when we'll probably, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, experience the 3 days of darkness, right? Because the sun's energy, once it's drained, this star will then, because that magnetic force doesn't exist anymore, and that force has been drained of its power, this star will then basically go off on its own trajectory back out into the solar, from its own orbit, basically, right? And that's when it's going to go past us, and most likely will cause those disasters that we're postulating in the science document. Now, once it does that, they need to, right now, if it is next to our sun, and if our sun is intermittently losing its energy, which the SDO satellite images certainly suggesting is what's happening right now, and it's not an eclipse of our sun or any sort of multiple eclipse. At least the physicist papers very clearly lay out what the physicist strongly believes from the data is what's happening to our sun. I've detailed that in part 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the 3 days of darkness, And then there's, in addition to this particular video, I'd certainly suggest and recommend that you also watch part 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Solar Sun Simulator. Okay, they're all very important. They all augment each other and this whole hypothesis, and it'll help you to get your head around it. There is some difficult language in there, as well as terms and maybe some equations. But I mean, just endeavor, I mean, try, give it what you have to give. And inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, it'll start making sense, inshallah. Anyway, so let me continue with this again now. The cloaking device uses ordinary lenses to hide objects across a range of angles. Okay. By the way, this is from the University of Rochester. Okay, doctor-student Joseph Choi is pictured with a multi-directional, perfect paraxial cloak using 4 lenses. Okay, inspired perhaps by Harry Potter's invincible cloak, scientists have recently developed several ways, some simple and some involving new technologies, to hide objects from view. The latest effort, developed at the University of Rochester, not only overcomes some of the limitations of previous devices, but it uses inexpensive, readily available materials in a novel configuration. Now, there's a video, I'm going to play it. The rest of the article continues, right? And I certainly recommend it. I'll leave a link, inshallah ta'ala, at the end of this, at the description box, right? But I'm going to play this so that you can just hear out exactly how they suggest they would basically use this technology and how it works.
So cloaking is essentially just an optical illusion, and people have been doing that for hundreds of years. There have been many high-tech approaches to try and achieve cloaking, and the basic idea behind these high-tech or exotic materials is to take light and have it pass around something as if it isn't there. And so we just figured a very simple way of doing that can just be using standard lenses and things that we would normally...
Okay, I had to pause here because I noticed it earlier on when I took a look at it. Do you see that, Thor Labs? Okay, Thor is a mythological god, Nauzubillah min zalik, from believing this nonsense, but this goes back again into mystery religions. So, you know how I was mentioning that academia basically push these sort of things, and sometimes in plain sight you'll see media even, like there's some sort of a box office movie called Thor that came out, and it did quite well, I understand, going back to this mythological god, it's like a god of thunder and lightning and stuff, and it's deliberate again, I mean, you can see where the allegiances are of even the academic world, right? And it's all done deliberately, there's a purpose behind it. Their allegiances go in a certain direction. I'm just going to show you, I'll pull this up. Okay, in Norse mythology, Thor, from Old Norse Por, is a hammer-wielding god associated with thunder, lightning, storms, oaks, trees, strength and protection of mankind, and also a hallowing and fertility. Okay, the cognate deity in wider Germanic mythology and paganism was known in Old English as Bnor, and in Old High German as Donar, runic Pono, stemming from a common Germanic pronoun. Anyway, meaning thunder. I'm going to leave this to you. I'll leave the link as well. You can read up on this if you feel inclined that way. But the point I'm trying to make is, it's all hidden in plain sight by these guys, right? And you can see where they're allied and who they are allied to. The very dark forces, very satanic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the Muslim ummah. And guide us all, inshallah ta'ala, and help us to see exactly who's at the helm, because we take everything from these guys, our science, our understanding of the world, our belief systems, and literally our life is basically a projection of what they've spoon-fed to us, whatever's been regurgitated. We take pride in our ability to shadow these people and learn from them and become like them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us and protect us and guide us, because subhanAllah, the only guidance is the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is where guidance lies and truth lies. And then the technology, alhamdulillah, that's fine. We're not negating that. But you got to see who's allied and who's advancing and who's leading these in these fields and what they're using these advances for and what they how they could potentially use it against the ummah. Anyway, let's let them continue.
We find in the lab.
What we've tried to develop is a simplified version of a perfect cloaking device for small angles. And what we've done is we've simplified it to a 4-lens system. And as you can see, all we've used are off-the-shelf optics that we can get from any of the optical stores. And the great thing about this is it can be scalable to any size that you can make the lenses. But the most important thing that we've done so far is this is the first device that we know of that can do 3-dimensional, continuous, multi-directional cloaking. So if you have rays that go at different angles, you can have the cloaking device still cloak it while what you see in the background is shifted accordingly without any distortion or changes. Say we place an object, in our case a ruler, in the middle. If we didn't have the lenses, we would be able to see the ruler. But what the lenses do is the lenses actually cloak the ruler. So if you were standing right here and you look straight through, what would happen is the rays would focus and then diverge out. So it actually bends the light around the ruler so that you won't be able to see the ruler if you looked at it straight down.
Now remember, not sorry to interject again, but not so long ago I shared, at least for those of you who are on the distribution list on WhatsApp for the science group, you'll find that I shared with you a image and a video, in fact, of the sun with a halo around it, right? And we were talking about how maybe it's the gravitational lens effect that was causing that, and what causes the gravitational lens effect is a mass that bends the light, right, behind the sun. Now this is very similar to that, but it just shows you how the light can be bent in order for you to obscure what's right in front of you, right? Because it reflects it into a different direction, so you don't actually see what's in front of you. And they're using that sort of technology. There's no reason why they wouldn't have deployed such technology if our hypothesis is correct, and they're using this sort of technology against. There's no reason to believe why they wouldn't do that, you know, and use it against the Ummah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, remember that when these celestial bodies, you know, get closer to us, you know, it'll be much more difficult for them to obscure it. Just like you see the ruler pencil on either side, but in the center you don't. It's because the pencil is almost next to the cloaking device. In the same way, the cloaking device is only small. We can't make it the size of these planets or the proton star. It's just because it's at a distance. Just like you're holding a penny or a 10-pence piece in front of your eye, it will block your field of vision, right? Because it's close to you. So think of your eye as the Earth and the 10-pence piece as the cloaking device or the solar sun simulator. If you put that in front of the sun, then you won't see the sun, simply because that penny or that 10-pence is simply, you know, covering your line of vision. And that's what we're suggesting is happening with this solar sun simulator, where its orbit is much closer to Earth, and it's stuck to Earth just pretty much like our moon is, which orbits around us, but it stays in front of the sun. So whilst the sun is at a distance and whatever star is next to our sun, we won't be able to see it because it's obscuring both of them, whilst at the same time it's simulating the sun as well. So it continues, so it's business as usual. We still feel like it's our sun that we're looking at and we're experiencing, but you'll find when you go outside it's unusually hot even today. And even the sun, again, it felt like it was burning me. I looked at it straight, I could look at it straight, I looked away for maybe a fraction of a second, and I mean, it wasn't even substantial. I could maybe, my vision was slightly blurred, and then it was back again and resumed to normal. But I can remember distinctively when I used to look at the sun, the real sun. Subhanallah, for a long time, my vision would be like blurred out, and I couldn't see properly. And this suggests that they're using some sort of artificial. Again, it just basically supports the hypothesis.
So we have slightly more complicated designs where an object can be cloaked entirely, but we've tried to simplify our design, and what we have is where the light goes through the center of the design, so that cannot be blocked. So the cloaking region is actually a ring-shaped area on the outside rather than the center.
People have been fascinated with cloaking for a very long time, and it's recently been a really popular thing, for example, in science fiction, also in Harry Potter. But I think people are really excited by the prospect of just being invisible.
For scientists, it's also very fascinating because we can actually put math and science behind that to make that a reality. Even though that's been a difficult subject to implement, it's very fascinating scientifically too.
Okay guys, now we're going to go to something the Japanese channel covered. So let's just skip the advert.
I love me.
Okay.
I don't know about you. Baby, I love me.
Sorry about that. It's one of them adverts where you have to watch it. So once the advert's gone, then inshallah I'll continue. But again, I mean, what you'll find is, I mean, as these planetary bodies come closer to us, then it will be much more difficult for them to cloak them, if indeed this is what's being used. Okay.
These researchers have created technology that's the first step towards making objects invisible.
The technology comes from 2003, but its developers say the Harry Potter-like invisibility cloak is just the beginning. The team, led by Dr. Susumu Tachi from Keio University, is now adapting its findings to help pilots, drivers, doctors, and others. Retroreflective projection technology uses a computer, a video camera, and projector to shine background images onto the front of a subject wearing specialized clothing, creating the illusion of invisibility. What makes the technology unique is a fabric made of glass beads only 50 microns wide, which can reflect light directly back at the source, much like a movie screen. Viewed from near the light source, the projection is bright even in broad daylight, and researchers say the material can be applied to almost anything. In the short term, the team sees usage in car interiors, airplanes and helicopters. They say blind spots could be eliminated and accidents and hard landings avoided by making walls seemingly transparent. The eventual goal, though, is to create an augmented reality that allows anyone to easily see information on real-world objects.
Looking to the future, instead of glasses, people could wear this, and it would act as a navigation system. It could also tell you who someone is if you meet them around town.
In the few years since the technology's invention, the price of the material, as well as that of computing, has come down, opening the door for smaller yet more powerful applications. Whether used to increase safety or to create a whole new form of computer-human interaction, the world is likely to see, or possibly not see, more of this technology in the future.
Okay, inshallah. I hope this goes a long way in trying to explain how they could be possibly cloaking our sun at the same time as using the solar sun simulator, just so that if the hypothesis is correct that there is a proton star next to our sun draining it of its energy as claimed in the 3 Days of Darkness volume 1, 2 and 3 and 4, then they could hide that from our view using similar technology, and then using technology of simulating the sun, which the patent already exists from NASA. So I hope this kind of helps, at least. I think visual reference goes a long way in trying to simplify things. So I mean, this was my crude attempt at doing that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it. Okay, Jazak Allahu khairan wa ahsanul jaza for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.